This one is going to ruffle some feathers, I would suppose. I want to talk a little bit over the next couple videos about some of the language around my life and experiences, and before I do that, I need to make, I guess, my opening statement, which is that I am one person, and these are my musings, my ramblings, my perspective on the language around blindness and disability. And this one specifically is about disability, and it's fine if you don't agree with me. Please be respectful. Whether you're disabled or not, I don't really care. It's more of a function of I want us to be able to have these kinds of conversations here in a space where there aren't often people who are willing to have these types of conversations or to entertain new ideas. So all I'm going to ask is that you remain open-minded and that you respect that this is just one dude. I don't speak for disabled people in particular. And here we go. So, as many of you may know, I was born at 26 weeks. I was a very, very premature child and have spent my entire life being blind. And blind specific is a word we're going to get into in the next video, so stay tuned for that. This time we're talking about the term disability. I have been disabled my entire life. And for me, this is just reality in the same way that someone might be born with brown hair, green eyes. There is a level of acceptance of the term disability that I have because it was in all my documents growing up. When I think about what an IEP or individualized education plan represents in the public school system, it is how to get a disabled student the help they need to be successful. And so an IEP first has to acknowledge what the disability is, how it affects a student's ability to function in school, and what needs to be done to essentially make up for any gaps or inconsistencies that might exist. So I had an IEP all through school. When I was in college, we had the CSD, the Center for Students with Disabilities. And so the term disability was front and center. And for me, it was, again, just this reality. It wasn't that there was a good way to say it or a bad way to say it. It was just a term that was present often throughout my time growing up. And it was something that I just had an understanding of is you're blind, you're disabled, and that's just the way that things are. Now, when I started going beyond college, and that was about like 2020, last few years, I started to see some changes being made around the term disability, primarily being made, for one, by non-disabled people, which in retrospect, I should have clocked that earlier, but I didn't. And there were little changes to certain things that I was following, and I didn't like them. They made me more uncomfortable than the situations that had obviously made people uncomfortable enough to see that they had to change a word. An example being, in the game of baseball, which I'm a huge fan of when I was a kid, if a pitcher or a player got injured and they weren't able to play anymore, they were put on the disabled list. And it meant you were not able to play baseball. You were on the disabled list. You couldn't play. You were disabled, and I'm going to come back to that specific kind of emphasis of that in a minute. But you were on the disabled list, and then you were off the disabled list because you were rehabilitated, you were able to play again, boom. They had the DL was the acronym for it, and I never had a problem with it, never really thought about it. It was just called the disabled list because players couldn't play, and that's the extent to which that term was used. And at some point, somebody came along and said, no. It has to be called the injured list. It can't be the disabled list anymore. And when the conversation would come up, it made me mad because it was like, what was wrong with disabled list? From, again, this is my perspective. I've never been offended by the term disabled. You were disabled to play. There's nothing wrong with disabled for baseball players. And instead, they had to call it the injured list because they were injured. Now, if there is something wrong with the term disabled, and you have to change it for quote-unquote able-bodied baseball players, and that was a point of distinction, what follows to me is that there's something wrong with the term disabled. And that is what I've seen over the discourse that I've had in the internet over the last several years is that there's something wrong with the term disability or being disabled. And there's been so many alternatives suggested. Things like differently abled. That's the first one we'll unpack. Differently abled, in my view, is a Marvel superhero. All right, Daredevil is differently abled. He is able to use a fifth sense. It is not just hearing. It is, in fact, almost a kind of sight to sense the world around him, beat up bad guys, because he's not real. The Hulk is differently abled, right? Differently abled implies that I am able to do something differently than other people to a degree that it has somehow become notable. And it drives me up the wall, across the ceiling, and down the other side. I am not differently abled. And I'll make another video sometime about the specific situation I'm going to talk about, but what'll often come up is, hey, your ears must work really good, right? Are you differently, like, are you able to hear better than me? And I have a whole analogy I'll get into at some point, and the reason why I say the answer to that question is no. Another topic for another day. Differently abled, don't like it, not a fan. I come back to, I'm disabled. It's fine for me to be disabled. Second term, and this is a page that I follow, and please, if you disagree with this, please don't go at this page or anything else. There's a page that I found on Facebook called Diverse Abilities, and they post about specific people with situations and how they've been able to adapt, and was actually one of the less egregiously offensive or infantilizing pages that I've found, and I just thought it was like a brand kind of thing. And the other day that they used it in the term, in a way that was like people with diverse abilities. And I was like, people with diverse abilities, so like people that can climb walls, people that can breathe underwater. Like, again, I come back to the weird, like, superhero, like, you're somehow more than human, you have diverse abilities that are, I don't like the notion that we have to make things abled instead of disabled, because a disability by definition is something that doesn't function in the way that it should. Whether that's for me, vision, for someone who's DHH, deaf of hard of hearing, or deaf or hard of hearing, excuse me, they're hearing something in their brain that functions incorrectly with the ears, and so they can't hear, or a physical malady in the ears that makes a person unable to hear. They are disable. I'm going to separate those again. Not able, being able to do the thing. I'm going to make the same point no matter what term I'm shooting down. So I'm going to leave it this way. For me, disability is reality. This is my every single day waking moment thing that I have, that I am, that I carry with me. It's not my entire personality, but it is a reality that I face every single waking moment and sleeping moment, quite frankly. And I have no issue with the term. And I wish that more people would listen and respect the opinions of disabled people when we talk about language, because what happens when you don't is the word and the ideas around the word get changed without me having a say. And so differently abled becomes, well, should I say differently abled? That's what I get when I walk into a job interview now. People don't feel comfortable around me because of language. And I'd rather have a few awkward moments and iron things out as we get familiar with each other as people than because you are scared that you're going to say the wrong word. And I hope that this video for you is just an understanding that, at least for me personally, I am a disabled person. I am comfortable as a disabled person because I don't know how to live as a non-disabled person or as an able-bodied person. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that feels like. And so disability for me is just the way things are. Thank you for watching this. I really appreciate the almost 300 of you that are subscribed. Like this if you like it. Subscribe if you want to see more. And we'll see you soon.